Hey Jay, can we test something? Can you hear me? Yes. Perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Hi Bill. Okay. Only one person, and that's on Zoom, it's just Jake. Okay. Okay. Okay, see you in a few. Bye.
Well, it is 6:30, folks. I can see at least 3 of us here. Eli, I see that you're present in the council chambers. Is Bill on his way? Oh, I'm also getting a little feedback, so, oh, sorry. I just didn't hear what you said.
Bill is downstairs. He'll be up in a few minutes.
Okay. I'm hearing some feedback in the council chamber. I think it could be, yeah, I think that's the only thing that's on. So, but that doesn't make sense because that's the only thing in the room. So I guess I'm just gonna have to deal with that.
Yeah.
All right. As it is 6:31, I'm calling to order this meeting of Barre City Transportation Advisory Committee. The first thing on our agenda is whether or not we have any adjustments to our agenda. I think also it'd be good to know if who is present tonight. I'm not I'm members of the committee. I mean, I can see that Jake Hemrick and Joanne Reynolds are here. Are there any other members who are present before we go on? Okay, just wanted to double check on that. I believe that 3 of us does constitute a quorum. That's why I was getting started. If I'm incorrect, somebody just let me know. But since there's only 5 members, that's where we stand right now. All right, so for those of us who are here, do we have any adjustments to the agenda? Okay, not hearing any. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from our October 20th meeting. Have you guys had a chance to review the minutes as prepared? All right. Are there any changes requested to those minutes before we? All right, I would take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, since that is everyone, I will say those are approved. Next up, visitors and communications. So this would be the point at which, if there are members from the public present who are here to give any input for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone here who has come to provide that that input?
Oh, can I add one thing?
You certainly can, Mayor Herring.
Sure. So I'm just following up. I wanted to make sure I knew who the secretary was for the committee.
We have an acting secretary, and it is Eli. He is sitting in council chambers right now.
Okay. So for most of the committees for the city, we don't have staff that are taking the minutes. It's actually done by one of the committee members. So I didn't know, is there someone who is not appointed or a member of the body that's able to take the minutes?
The current setup is what was proposed by Bill Ahern. I am sure that we have someone who is able to take minutes.
Okay, I'm just wanting to make sure that that's something that we can correct moving forward. One of the concerns that was brought up at council was the number of staff that are attending different committee meetings. Just because if we have Steve here, Bill here, Eli here, that's 3 staff people, and typically there's only one person that attends different committee meetings.
I concur. Yeah, it would. I think that it would be appropriate for a member of the committee to be secretary. I was previously secretary, or acting secretary, I guess, because the minutes were not taken otherwise. But I can't do that now.
Yep,
So,
understood.
I have no problem taking minutes. That works.
So let's.
But I also am respectful of Bill too, of his intent and the way he set this up. So.
Yeah, let's take that up at our next meeting. Eli, are you on board with continuing through this meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to make sure that we're doing it right. Right. Was there any other visitors who wanted to address something that's not on the meeting agenda? All right. Hearing nothing, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the Public Works Department monthly transportation report. While Bill gets started, I'm going to try to share my screen. I'm not an expert at this. I'm going to do my best.
So as the season wrapped up for us, we had less that we did with traffic management, and one of the major endeavors from September 25th on, we're trying to deal with right-of-way clearing, basically site distances at intersections, trees that were actually hanging into the road, and we were doing something that you would call a box cut, meaning that we would go up no higher than 16 feet so that you basically had the state clearance to the edge of the road, and then that way the city couldn't be liable for any damage from trees. And basically in some places, and again, this is something that gets people's attention. We cleared the end of Warren Street or Long Street and Warren Street. And we had a lot of feedback, probably 5 or 6 folks called to talk with us about it. It was 5 to 1 in favor of it. People appreciated being able to look and see down the street. And someone pointed out that they lost the screening from the low-income people that live below them. So I didn't feel bad at all. It was kind of nice to know that we accomplished our traffic goal, and in the meantime, maybe a social goal or two as well. The other things we did some painting. Last month, I think I reported to you that we didn't have paint. We had ordered it in July or early August. With a 4 to 6 week delivery time, it turned into a little bit over 12 weeks. And it came in, and so we did a lot of stop bar painting and crosswalks. Since last month, we actually did all the crosswalks out North Main so that people could move from one side of North Main to the other. We've had a number of comments on the crosswalk out near the Dollar General in the north end as being an important crossing and not very visible, and we've restored that. Another effort that we made was to try to make sure that we got important stop bars in. So after camp was paved, we didn't have any stop bar on Cassie. We had the stop bars on Cassie, and we're looking at school safety. We went up Prospect and found that virtually all of the stop bars in Prospect were missing. They'd worn through, and we replaced those. So we've done a little bit of painting, and the guys thought they had the machine put up, but if it didn't get done today, and I'm not certain that it could have, we had one more painting to do, and that was on Merchant Street, and we've got some curb that we're going to turn white. We did actually go back and because I just wanted to deal with how the mistake was made, and we did find the 2012 Google version does show that much of Merchant Street was in fact painted yellow. But there are parts where we actually see that the paint was missing. You could still see it in spots, but that's kind of water over the dam because the commitment's been made. The council's decided that we are going to try to add parking on both sides of the street. And the model that we're going to use is we will have, I'm going to call it oppositional parking with 2 truck pull-offs. The truck pull-offs are 125 feet in length. So the average length of a 50-foot or 48-foot trailer and tractor is right around 82 feet. The 125 feet allows them to actually just get over 5 or 6 feet. They wouldn't have to get over the whole lane width, but that would allow passage. And so with 2 of those, one on each side, there's no more than a 250-foot distance that anyone would have to wait. So we will have parking on both sides, and then we'll have 2 areas, one on each side, that allows, if we did have a truck-to-truck arrangement cross, one of them can simply slow down and yield to the other. So it certainly should work. It's a great place to try it. There's not a lot of truck traffic, so I'm really hopeful that there isn't any kind of reaction to it. I don't expect it, so I'm hopeful it'll be successful.
And the residents, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. It seems like that. It seems like that addresses the residents' concerns that were expressed.
I hope so. I mean, I think we can still do more on Merchant Street, but the place to do that is going to be in the more northern portion. So we really should be looking at a second speed table at some point. I had one that I laid out, but I prefer to wait on that item until spring when it's closer to time to install it, so I don't create any early expectations. But I think another speed table is in order there. We actually did speed cart data with the PD that really kind of confirmed that the northern end has an issue as much as the southern end. But so I think I covered most of what was in my written report, and happy to answer any other questions.
I wanted to make a note about some. I think that they're mostly things from last go around, but didn't. I didn't have the mental capacity to totally make sense of everything at that time. But I was thinking primarily of things that are, actually, I think the first thing I would say is that having this report is really useful, not only just to have a sense of what's going on, but also to have a sense of like, is there something where going forward we can say this is some place where it makes sense for the committee to have some input, either in terms of creating a general policy or in decisions like this going forward. And I was thinking that changing Summer Street to a serpentine, the asymmetric center line of Merchant Street, that's addressed obviously now. So, but also the changes to Eyre Street in response to the concerns from Spalding. These seems to me all like the kinds of changes to traffic patterns that it would make, I mean, like they're big enough changes that it makes sense to have the opportunity for citizen input, or at least a public, public input into the process. So I just wanted to note that those things being water under the bridge now, they're the kind of things that for me raise a, hey, let's make sure that we get that, outlined and presented to the TAC. The second thing was more of a sort of like process and prioritization observation, which is that the school got a really fast response, making a change to a street, which I think is, I mean, the bulb outs are a beneficial change, but it is a change that, am I mistaken in seeing that there's an asymmetric center line on Eyre Street now as well, where there used to be a serpentine?
So there, and I think yes, you are mistaken.
All right, okay, yeah.
But let me kind of walk through that, because I think this goes to the heart of how to work with our advisory committee. So Eyre Street has been a street that has had issues for at least 25 years. One of the primary and initial ones was that for whatever reason, the parking was placed on the most dangerous side of the street that it could be. And there was only parking on one side, and it was on the inside of the curve with a lot of truck traffic. And so the city actually started by rearranging the parking on Eyre Street so that the sight distance on the inside of the curve was better. There aren't cars there. And then secondarily, and what we were really after, is the trailing wheels on a long vehicle always run a shorter radius curve. That means they run to the inside. And so when trucks went along Eyre Street, the trailer ran closer to the cars. And so where do accidents happen? They happen in the blind spot. And with those wheels running tighter to the vehicles, greater risk to people getting out. So by switching it over, we started with making it safer that way. But the follow-on has been that there's been a lot of issues at Spalding at release time. And
Right. I actually, and I think we went over that last time.
Okay.
What I meant to bring up was that the last that I recall talking about Eyre Street with the TAC was gave some blessing to the serpentine pattern for managing parking. And at this point, making these changes, it seems to me that they should have come to the TAC to say, hey, this is a different approach. We want to do this. Does it make sense? And I think, I didn't hear what you said.
I guess what I'd like to do would be to understand what your goals as chair are. And what I find myself hearing is, if I try to express something, typically I have the sense that you're not interested in hearing this. And if you knew all this, I'm not sure what it is that you're asking for, because if you understand the city took actions to make it safer, it seems to me that you're expressing concern that something was done quickly and it was done without seeking your advice.
Oh, no, not my advice.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I think there's a lag.
I want to be responsive. And as I listen to this, I think there was an opportunity for me to be more responsive and to include the TAC. But what drove those issues was a sense of urgency, and the fact that we had some other problems there that dealt with getting the traffic out of the school. So I just want to understand what it is that you're asking.
And that's what I'm going to finish by saying, which is I think that sense of urgency is what I'm recognizing, and saying that perhaps it is it's important to put this urgency in context. What the opportunity cost of building these bulb outs is that we do not do other planned work, and effectively what happens is, if something comes forward and it creates a sense of urgency, that jumps the queue. There's stuff that has been approved, there's stuff that has been committed to being done, and instead we do something else. And the main thing that I want to bring forward, and I'm sure it's obvious, but I just in case, is that the school district is here, but it's not part of our municipal government, and it's a user of our streets like everybody else. And I think if we imagine that there was a grocery store located on Ayers Street and its shoppers were pulling out and endangering other shoppers, our response to the grocery store would be like, that sounds like a serious problem. We really want to solve that as a city. In the meantime, is there something that you can do to change the behavior of your shoppers? Because it sounds like this is an internal issue in terms of how you're using our streets. So in no way do I want to say it's not important, but I think that we might be giving it an excess of sort of like an expedited preference.
So I guess what I don't disagree with you at all. And what really drove that attention was really simple. If you look at the ADT and the pedestrian traffic on that street, the pedestrian traffic on that street is as high as there is in the city. It's very nearly what it is on Main Street. And so, yes, it jumped the queue. If what would work better is for me to bring that question to the TAC, so you might advise me, that's fine. But I really think that the decision, the priority setting operationally is the cities and city governments. And this is an advisory committee. And I think I missed an opportunity to gain your advice.
That's all I'm saying too. And I like I said before, I don't think it's the wrong decision, but it jumped out to me as something where we'd say, like, if we were designing a process, it probably wouldn't be that something comes up and we're like, oh, that's the most important thing, do it now. I mean, I know that's not what you did, but I think that, that's, yeah, the point that I'm making is that if we have stuff that's in the queue waiting to get done, it's good to have an opportunity to weigh the new things against it, even if it's obvious that the new thing is the most important.
I agree. I think that is a good course of action. And I your point is well taken. It's just good practice.
Right. Well, thanks. I have to quit Zoom and restart it in order to be able to share my screen. I realized that when I gave it a shot. So I'm just going to drop out for a second. I should be right back. I apologize.
Very good. I don't know. Are we still able to talk? Oh,
No.
Very good. So if we just wouldn't, sorry that Michael had that problem. I don't know if Teams is any better. That's another tool we've been using, but the same thing happens in all of the packages, so.
Just as a comment, I think this has only started happening since we hooked up the OWL camera. Before that, I don't remember us having issues with it freezing like this.
Looks like I didn't ruin it. Okay, sorry for that.
Just one question. Bill, for the trucks that go on Air Street, are they favoring that route over Circle Street or Boynton because of the bridge clearance and the signalized intersection?
So Boynton really has the bridge clearance issue, and very few full-size trucks can get through it. I think it's 12 foot. So Boynton doesn't see virtually any large truck traffic. Circle sees a lot of outbound traffic. Again, Bella Venice has a major, it has a storage yard and a major service center on Boynton, but they go in and out on Boynton, exit to the south on Circle, come in from the north on Ayers. So both Circle and Ayers see traffic, but Ayers sees virtually all the traffic that's from the northbound area.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry, guys, I lost all my controls because I was, the screen sharing UI is different. Like I said, not an expert at this. When I am screen sharing, you see the transportation report up now. Is that correct? All right.
Yes.
Cool, thanks. Sorry for the delay. I'm just trying to find some stuff. All right. Bill, yeah, the next item is 5.2. Were there new resident concerns raised since we last met? I just have this as a standing item on the agenda. If there's not, it's,
Yeah, so there were some previous that we haven't touched, but there haven't been any new ones in the last month.
All right. Well, I think if they're not new, we don't have to address them right now, and we can make sure we get them into to our table going forward. In that case, I will move on to our new business. 6.1 is discussing priority items for upcoming meetings. Let's see if I can get this going correctly. All right, do you guys see this? Is it too small? Okay. I'm trying to share my smaller screen to make it actually work. So most of this should be familiar to us. I tried to collect everything that we had brought up as issues and cleared out some of the things that we have addressed already. My intention is to expand them so that they're a little bit better defined. And then, in some way get them into an order that suggests how we're going to approach them and get them sectioned into, a rough idea of how many meetings from now we're going to get to them. I was curious for the members who are here, if there's a preference of which things we should put at the top.
Are there things
Michael,
that I'd be curious what staff would put at the top?
And then my question, Michael, is, are you asking us to prioritize?
Well,
What you mean by putting at the top?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
I don't think we need to prioritize the entire list, but let's say if there's a few that we think are the most valuable, we can grab those and say, when we're not dealing with a particular question about advisement, what areas of policy are we going to try to take on?
I'm with Jake. I'd be interested in hearing what staff think.
So in terms of, there's really two levels to this. One is what's putting pressure on us right now that we've got to deal with. And one of the biggest issues that I have pending is access management, because I'm trying to recover the city's right-of-way and to address some safety hazards. And in two of the cases, which are both things that the TAC has looked at and considered, I have owners that are very irate and insist that I shall not do what I proposed to them. One is 802 Coffee, and the other is RJ Service on North Main Street. And both involve long-term historic uses of the right-of-way that weren't good practice. And so it's actually something that, and perhaps the TAC doesn't need to be involved in this. I've got to do something in terms of outreach to the community about access management and encroachments. Encroachments is a very close second because I've got folks that have put things that really impede sight distance. And essentially, I didn't get to them this year, so they're going to be spring things because we're going to be talking about taking physical fencing down and removing it from the city's right-of-way. And winter is never a good time for that. So those two have a sense of urgency to them, but perhaps not importance. And so when I look at importance, I would tell you citywide traffic calming is the #1 issue for us. And it's, I think the phrase that was coined and I really liked was an epidemic of speeding, because it is happening all through the city, and people feel it personally, and that really needs to be an emphasis point. And when I looked at the second bullet, I think that's an example that I would welcome help in, and having other minds helping with how do we do that? You know, is this something that the city uses, what resources it has for social media? Is it something where we look at trying to build some kind of simple PSA and see if the PSA could get some attention from local media? It's a really good point, and I think there's some statistics out there that would shock people. You know, the probability of a fatality at 23 is something like 20 to 30%. Probability of a fatality at 31 is above 70%. So that 8 miles an hour changes the likelihood of a deathly encounter for a pedestrian by a factor of almost 3. And so it's the kind of thing that gets people's attention. They look at the fact that, geez, I do 25 all the time, and 35 is only a little bit more than 25, but 35 is way past that hazard threshold. So, you know, maybe that's too obscure, but I think those types of factoids put out might actually help people understand why it's such an important issue. Again, traffic calming, I would tell you, is probably our most important issue. And then I think the aspects to how we go about that are important for the committee to weigh in and ideally to find a way that we could enlist the committee to help make them happen.
Yeah, I think, I think that those are important things to prioritize. I would be interested in having us address lane widths in that context also. But I think the question is that something that we can do separate from a comprehensive traffic calming plan? Or is it something we can think of? Because if you can't break it off as a separate thing, it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to put it, put it in there in some order.
So I think the lane width discussion really requires some participation from the commercial interests that aren't on the committee, because they will be dramatically affected, and the fact that they're not at the table won't matter in terms of their response. It'll be, if anything, an excuse for them to maintain that whatever we decide isn't considering their needs. So as we pick that up, I urge the committee to make some formal outreach, and that could be done through staff, But I'd like to have commercial interests in that dialogue about lane width.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that when we're setting rules, we're setting it for all of the road users, and to say, no, we're going to ignore a class of road users is not the way I would want to proceed.
So in that vein, I'm open to the idea of the committee advising me what they'd like me to do. So I've considered that before, but felt that if I'm trying to be neutral and then I go out and solicit a user group, I'm not sure that's a neutral position, so I haven't done it until now. But if the committee supported me, creating a form letter and sending it to some of the granite polishing sheds, some of the granite haulers, some of the trucking interests, if the committee thought that was worthwhile, I would do that. But I wouldn't undertake it without the committee's assent.
I think that reaching out to interested parties is great. I think that if we were to imagine that only trucking companies were interested parties, that's probably the point at which it would start to be we would be stacking the deck in terms of input. But I think that there's no problem with reaching out to people who would be interested in the rules that affect them.
Are there other groups that folks can think of that I ought to look to? And as you said that, Mr. Chair, I thought, probably another place would be to look at downtown merchants who do a lot of freight work. Maybe there should be some outreach to them as well. Not so much that they actually run those large rigs, but they're essential to them. And I think fuel oil dealers are another, and that's a group that I was looking at for weight limit participation as well.
It seems like we're only considering the people who will be using the streets at their widest amounts. Is that what you're saying? I'm going to call on you, Lucas, in a second.
So I think what I'm trying to highlight is that there are lane width users who actually require greater widths. And so as we consider narrowing things, they're most affected. Certainly there are smart car users, but typically they're going to have room enough in whatever we select to not be an issue. This is about who we are going to.
You mean they're the drivers who are most affected? That's what you mean?
Well, it's more than the driver. It's the economic vitality that those particular services present. And again, that's the purpose of getting the outreach is to get their input and allow their opinions to be weighed by the committee. I don't want to leave anyone out. I just recognize that those are folks that will be dramatically affected.
That is true. Go ahead, Jacob.
And one person's wall, fire department. They should definitely be added in that, because their tower trucks and everything are longer.
Oh, is Eli talking?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Eli is talking and go ahead.
The fire department and also the paramedics, they should be involved in that as well, because their vehicles are significantly wider, and especially when they're driving down the roads and there's people on the side, they need the extra lane widths, so they should be involved in that conversation as well.
Yep. I agree with all that. I think jumping into an appropriate lane width discussion before we have street standards and street classifications is I think is a little bit premature, and also the designation of through freight trucking routes and those that would be serving like a residential fuel carrier, because I think there's a balance there, and certainly factors about traffic volume and whether or not it's a dead end street or there are only so many enterprises on or homes on a street could all be factors in what is an appropriate lane width for any given street type based on a classification. So to me, it seems like it's a broader conversation than just jumping into what's an appropriate lane width. and could be part of a traffic calming plan as well. Since, I mean, discussion of lane width is essentially a discussion of traffic calming.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, is that lane width is something that without clearly defining what our, who's affected, what our objectives are, we would be running in circles. So that suggests to me that, yeah, we want to look at traffic calming holistically. We want to go into our street classification, and then we can, we map our freight routes. And at that point, we know what the objectives are for different parts of the city. And it's a lot easier to then say like, oh, well, no, it makes sense to do this way because we've nailed down these variables. I think that makes a lot of sense. So
and I think it's fair to different types of commercial enterprises, and it provides a predictable framework for potential investors. Certainly somebody that wants to run an outdoor cafe has a very different interest about how a street is used than a large granite truck. And it'd be nice if we could create win-win situations for both enterprises by thinking about where can these uses be best accommodated and in ways that reduce conflicts and improve the quality of life.
Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense. And I feel like I have a lot of information about the desire for priority at this point. So we can, I'll take a run at this list and we'll use it to inform what is coming up. Mayor Herring, you had your hand up. Did you, I know it's down now, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't leave you out.
Yeah, no, I was just going to note the same thing that Eli did about making sure that EMS services were addressed,
Right.
but on the flip side too, that we're also addressing cyclists and motorcyclists, because there are sometimes, even when you put in a speed bump, that can be detrimental to someone who's on a two-wheeled vehicle versus one that has 4 or more. And I think part of the conversation we need to realize too is we asked for a charter change. The Agency of Transportation asked for a change regarding basically just making sure that we're doing the correct surveys when we do request for speed limits that are less than 25 miles an hour. And that's something that we should just take into consideration as part of the review. So, we would want to have a full survey or study of each section before we made changes.
So I think actually that's I think a good example of something that would be good for the committee to take a look at as well. So again, there's a bill out there, I think bringing it to the committee to look at and understand where we are. At the mayor's request, we tried to poll VTrans as to their concerns, and they gave us some information, but they kind of said they didn't say they'd keep their cards close to their chest. They said, we prefer to actually establish our position in the legislative process. So we're not able to really learn fully what we might need to do to try to make that bill successful, but it's certainly that's the city's intent, is to get that authority to be setting speed limits at less than 25 and to understand what the state's concerns are as the city undertakes that. So a good committee topic for a short exploration in a future meeting.
I'll add that to our queue. All right. Thank you for helping to get that stuff in order and to look at the list. Also in that document, I'm not going to look at it right now, but that is where, for the time being, at least, we're keeping the list of resident concerns, saying, hey, there's a problem here. Similarly, there will be a section where there's an empty section, which is our standing commitments, which is stuff that we haven't done yet. So we'll get there. Now we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is looking at our current transportation planning. I'm going to go through this not in detail. I know I said that in the there's a hand raised. Amy Golford, did you have something to add to where we were coming from?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to put it. I had just seen your document where you had the list of backlog, and it jumped
It's-
out to me that the Berlin and Smith Street issues are missing.
It's not complete. It's true.
Okay,
But
so
yes.
I just wanted to put that in as I saw that as a huge issue, you know, much like city council had to sit through a long discussion on the street last night. I think like the same thing could have been said for a lot of confusion about what's going on with Berlin Street, Smith Street. I wrote to everyone who had a TAC email address on the TAC page last month, a 3-page letter about not knowing when certain things were being discussed at TAC meetings. My neighbors and I were not aware. This has been going on for 2 years between a mix of neighborhood meetings, TAC meetings that those of us in the neighborhood didn't know what was going on. You know, agenda minutes from different things, like literally putting in links to Times Argus articles in my letter because they explain what actually happened. Like it has quotes that were actually said at previous meetings that are not minutes. So I'm kind of at my wit's end about this, and I think some of my neighbors are as well. But I just want to make sure that Street and Smith Street are not missing from that. If you look at City Council packet from last night, look at the police report of traffic stops. I don't know what the analytics are, but there's a whole section of a whole bunch of speed stops on. And I thank the police for doing that in the Berlin Street and Railroad Street areas. But like, this is a problem, and I was kind of alarmed just to see this table and not see Berlin on there.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm sorry
that's
to
just
leave it out.
my 2 cents. So
I appreciate it. I will make sure that it is added. I am aware that it is in our backlog, and I'm in the process of trying to make this more transparent to residents of Berry City. I wish that I could say that I had succeeded. It is not there yet. And I really appreciate you coming and making sure that this is going to get in there. I'll put it there. If not tonight, then tomorrow. All right, now actually, on to 6.2, the transportation planning. All right. I am very glad to have had that added. Where am I doing? Transportation plans. Okay, as I said in the email, I don't want to go into this in a ton of detail. The main purpose of this is to create this document, because I recognize that it is hard to find this stuff. And if we had, you know, a fully fleshed out staff, we would have people in the planning department who were working, you know, across city departments to advocate for the stuff that's in the plan. And I understand that basically nobody has the bandwidth to do everything. And that's, you know, that's not something we can wave a wand about. So I thought that a thing I could do is at least put these together into one document so that we know what is the stuff that's from the plans that is relevant to transportation. They're in chronological order, but I also kind of think that they are in increasing order in importance and authority, because obviously the municipal plan is, you know, it's a state mandated plan that city council adopts to direct what we're going to do for the next 8 years after it's adopted. Yeah, I'm not super proud of this plan, only in the sense that we want so much more, but we get what we get. But in any case, they're in chronological order, so I'll go through them at kind of a good clip. So from 2010, we have Merchants Row master plan. This is for the area behind the parking lots along Merchants Row behind the shops. You know, where Clark's Feed Store used to be, and you know, along there. There's a bunch of stuff in this plan. Not a lot of it has to do with transportation. The pages that I put in this document are 5 through 8 of the plan. Trying to figure out how to do this right. Sorry. I feel like the summary basically describes pretty much what it is. It says, hey, we want to make this better for pedestrians. We want to improve and clarify automobile circulation and calm the traffic. And then it was surprisingly, perhaps to people who have lived in the city since this plan was created, the plan for this plan was to decrease the amount of parking by something like, I don't know, was it like a quarter or a fifth or something? But the plan says, hey, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine because nobody uses it. Like, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but basically that's the tone. It's just, I'm sure Bill appreciates that plans don't always reflect the realities that come about. So anyway, I'm not going to linger on this plan, but the summary, I think, says it all. Let's scroll down a little bit to North Main to Summer Street master plan has some more interesting sections of all of our current plans that were approved by council. This one goes into the most detail about what to do with streetscapes operationally, like what, like how should we, how should we design our streets and landscape them? The city plan does not go into particular detail. The municipal plan, I mean, doesn't go into particular detail about this. But our pages, specifically 20 through 29, describe, hey, here's what we should do to Summer Street and Elm Street. That's what's in the plan. The plan itself has three main parts. One part of it is create a bunch of connected parking lots in the space behind the shops. So say something, the idea behind it was like, hey, the parking lot behind those other shops is really good. Let's make another one. And that was, that was the idea. For myself, that's not a part of the plan that I particularly embrace. But it is there, and some of it has been accomplished. The other part is city place, and the third part is what to do about the streets. So that's why I think it is interesting. There are streetscape recommendations as the authors of the plans, cite history. They say, hey, look, our streets used to look kind of nice, and they kind of look not nice now. What's, hey, can we fix that? And then they go on to say, here are some different proposed sections of how we can treat different streets and fit different things in here. These are all things that, when we look at, urban transportation planning, we've seen these all before. But basically, this plan is saying the way that we're going to activate all of the land use planning that we have around this, all of the economic development, is by changing our street design to make sure that stuff stays connected for people on foot. Just, it's a bunch of renderings and stuff. This one's a personal favorite of mine, ironically. Won't get stuck on that, I promise. Here is the section where it talks about the idea of taking parking lots that are far apart. It's, and this is, this parking, sorry, the issue of parking lots is perhaps not strictly transportation related. Obviously, it's, using the vehicles. I don't know if it falls under our purview or not. The argument of the plan is that the parking lots as they were underutilized because they weren't connected. And the idea was, let's move them, have them be connected, and develop more densely along Summer Street as a, as a way of making up for what we lose in the middle to those parking lots. Some of it has been done. And I think we can skip past this plan at this point. So having gone past these two little plans, does anybody have any thoughts or questions at this point? Am I blowing past things way too fast? Okay, because I mean, I'm trying to, I'm trying to give tiny excerpts, but I recognize I'm editorializing a little bit.
So Mr. Chair, I think one of the things that's a very valuable component of this is just getting those plans known. Myself, I didn't know of the 2009 plan, and I understand it's been adopted. The
2010? Oh, so that's 2012, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's helpful to have that message out there. I think at the same time, as we go through this, we're gonna find that some of the things that went into the plans might warrant further examination as we go forward. It
Yeah,
might get rolled into the overall city plan later.
Yeah, and you'll find that the municipal plan says, hey, we need to reconsider some aspects of the 2012 North Main Street plan. But yeah, I think that it would be great for them to be reflected in the overall municipal plan. I think that one of the things, as you know, is that one of the things that shaped the plans as they are is a lack of resources to that go into creating the plans themselves. So so we have these old plans that are not integrated, but they still do fit together at least. All right, so the municipal plan is gigantic. It's way too big. But there's reasons. So that's all I'll say about that. We have for this one, I accepted the intro. We don't really need to go over the intro very much, except that it says, hey, we want to be healthy. Let's make our great places be connected together. And then there's the transportation section of the plan, which is 31 through 39. And then if you can believe it, there's a page 175, and the neighborhood section is the last part of the plan. And those I went through and I just highlighted the little bullets in each section of the city that were called out for some kind of transportation intervention. All right, we'll skip over that. The introduction is really just there for the curious reader for later. All right. Each of these sections of the municipal plan has kind of it has a three-part structure, which sort of observes how things are. It says, hey, this is what's important. Then it says, what do we want? And then the third part is how are we going to get to what we want? And I think we can actually skip a lot of it and go to the how are we going to get what we want, which is the next steps section, because those are, ideally, what we would get out of this plan is something that's operational, that like you can take the next steps and do them. But I think there are some shortcomings that make it not exactly straightforward to do that from this plan. Nonetheless, it's really instructive about what was set forward as these would be the best case things to have happen next. So as you can see, we've got a complete streets policy, which I think we could read as our, actually, I don't know if we can read it as that, sorry. I hit the button, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, a complete streets policy seems like a good thing to have. I was going to say something and I'm striking that. I think I didn't make sense. Let's see. Yeah, the next step would be working with GMTA, add more stops. Seems totally like, seems like a good thing. Possibly something the TAC is involved in. Fortunately, there are sections here where it says, yeah, there we are. We're in the partners section. So I would expect us to be, I went through and I looked and now I can't remember exactly, but I would expect us to be in the partners for pretty much all of the ones in the transportation section. Yeah, number 3 is safe routes to school. Now, is that even still a thing? I honestly, yeah.
It's not a program formally anymore. So the name has gone away, but the concepts are still there.
Yeah. So I think this is one of those things that we would love to change this plan, to update it to reflect the reality of the present. A lot of this plan made its way through from the 2014 plan with not too many changes, simply because of a lack of expertise in knowing exactly how to make the changes. So what we have is we have a plan that sets forth priorities, but is missing in some things. And I feel like the knowledge of specifically which programs to use might be one of those things that we'll like to get in a further revision of this plan. So, but I mean, yes, fundamentally the goal of making it so kids can get to school on foot or by bicycle is an excellent goal. Let's see, paper streets. Yeah, that one's come up. So I think we know exactly what's going on there. Develop and adopt road standards. That's something that we talked about earlier in this conversation as one of our priorities. I'd call them street standards because we basically don't have roads for the most part here. But you know, the name for it is not that, you know, is not that meaningful. But this one is asking for us to, you know, basically slot our streets into 3 categories. Say, are they like, you know, are they the big roads, the arterials? Are they roads that are essentially connections or essential connections between different neighborhoods that we need to maintain to a different standard than our residential streets, or the residential streets, which we want people to go slow? Let's see. Yeah, we have this pedestrian environment quality index item. Comes up and then everyone's like, oh man, that's really expensive. We don't know what we get out of it. I don't know exactly what we get out of it either. I think that the idea is that once you do it, it unlocks certain kinds of grant money. I don't know. That one's been around for a long time. That one, Mike Miller created that item, and I know he had a reason, but I don't know what it is. All right, let's see. Access management. Right here, it says review access management provisions in the city's land use regulations. Now, I kind of think this has happened because we totally redid the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance. So this is an open question and a good one for Bill to have some feedback on at some point, which is, you know, like what shortcomings do we have in our current ordinance? We don't need to know now, but I mean, just this one might be done, or it might be like, oh yeah, let's really do that.
Well, Michael, if I could jump in, my
Please.
understanding of Bill is that he's trying to deal with kind of existing non-conforming access management issues. Whereas if something comes in for a site plan, I assume that, you know, he would get a glance at that and be able to address some non-conformities through the UDO provisions, and hopefully those are in good shape.
Yeah, so hopefully those are done. Yeah, fingers crossed. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, the UDO was done before this plan, so don't know the answer to that one. Number 8, develop a citywide long-range bicycle and pedestrian plan. This one, I mean, we're going to have a role in it. I mean, I think that is probably spearheaded by Paths, Routes, and Trails, is my guess. But obviously, it's something that, you know, like we're all playing in the same sandbox. Number 9, complete construction of the bike path through the city. Timing, like that, Bill? 2022. You know, yeah, they were guesses. And then this is interesting. This is the only, as far as I know, the only specific transportation project that says, hey, do this one thing, which is railroad trestle on Venetti Place. I can't say that I actually know what that is, but it's in here. And then, yeah, number 11 is a little aspirational, which is like, can we get a traffic circle so that we can see its performance relative to signalized intersections in Berry City. And those are the big picture things. I'm going to skip past our benchmarks. That's the idea, was that they're useful for measuring success. I'm not sure if they are, but for our purposes, we don't need to know whether that's the case. All right, let's see. I'm just going to go kind of, even quicklier through these, looking for my yellow. All right, yeah, I got some yellow highlighting here. So it's saying pedestrian access from North Main Street across Merchants Row and down Granite Street. So like, goal for this neighborhood is make Granite Street a better pedestrian street. Let's see, Willie Street, says the bike path goes here. Good to know. I highlighted the bike path stuff. I wasn't, I thought it was worth doing as transportation. It seemed like it would fit. All right. Also, bike path goes here through the Vine Street neighborhood. And each of these neighborhoods, I recognize that they might be hard to tell exactly where they are based on the overall map. A few pages above, it shows all of the neighborhoods fitting together. In the future, I would say maybe we won't worry that much about, unless we know automatically, oh yeah, we know what this neighborhood is. We can do homework to stitch these back together in our brains, basically. All right, Willie, Vine. All right, and then, yes, also in the Vine neighborhood, it says the industrial property should be accessed from and truck traffic routed onto Blackwell Street to the greatest extent feasible. Transportation goal. All right, which neighborhood is this? North Main Street. Efforts should be made to reduce the expanses of asphalt along property frontages. There we go, access control again. And better control access to reduce congestion, improve motorist and pedestrian safety, and create a more attractive street. So I'm gonna go back up to the map for North Main Street. Yeah, so, all right, I'm gonna go back down now. All right, extra North Main Street. Bike path goes here, and then it says efforts should be made to connect the sidewalks in this neighborhood to the city sidewalk network. I do not know whether that means the fragment of sidewalk that is at Richardson Road, sorry, or not. But this is what the plan says. Try to make the sidewalks connect here. All right. Nothing here, nothing for Farwell Street. Nothing for Maple Avenue, it seems. All right. Hope Cemetery. I think does it say there needs to be a highway through Hope Cemetery? I shouldn't make jokes. Sorry, everyone. All right. I know, but it gets dry. It's hard to know. All right. Merchant Street has the line about non-local traffic being discouraged. All right, Tremont Street says, when major repairs or upgrades are made to 3 streets in this neighborhood, sidewalks should be added in the Tremont Street neighborhood. Similarly, for the Camp Street neighborhood, it says, saying specifically Camp Street would benefit from having sidewalks. And where did I just scroll past? South Main Street. All right, yeah, this one gets a big focus. So first it says make it prettier, streetscape, sidewalk, access management. Then make sure that pedestrian access from Tilden House to other places is maintained well. And then it says this would be because it's a level grade, it's an ideal walk bike connection between downtown and Spalding. All right, Ayers Street says, hey, it would be nice to make improved pedestrian connections to the school from surrounding neighborhoods. And it seems like the city just did that with the ball bats. Yeah, making progress. Yeah, similarly, let's see, sidewalks extended from Ayers Street to surrounding neighborhoods. Same deal. What did I just get past? Boynton Street, yeah. Wouldn't it be great? It says if you could use trucks to, use Boynton Street to move trucks through. Yeah, well, that's an expensive proposition. and the railroad has to cooperate, right? So anyway. This one is, let's see, for Circle Street. Circle Street, it says sidewalks should be added here too. And sorry, these are on multiple pages, so I have to flip back and forth. Rotary Park says pedestrian and bicycle access to the neighborhood should be improved. And then it says complete the bike path through the city. We're where it's a goal. Yeah, and then it says, oh, and creating access from Allen Street. And so this is a question that I brought up recently about getting from the alternative school. Was it possible to, in the plan it notes, hey, let's make an access on Allen Street. I didn't remember that at the time. I don't know, maybe I did somewhere, but and then secondary access. And I think that does come up regularly, right? All right, what do we got here? Brooklyn Street, add sidewalks, and it also says complete that bike path. This one is, okay, sorry, Allen Street, bike path goes through part of it. Yeah, access should be established from Allen Street to the elementary school. And oh yeah, and efforts should be made to provide safe pedestrian access from Allen Street to Prospect Street. So all things that are kind of, these are things, yeah, things that we're talking about now, right? They've been around in the plan. Those parts have, I'm sure, have been there since at least 2014. All right, so Countryway says if a lot more are built, then there should be a second access point for the subdivision, it says. Nothing West Hill, really nothing. Oh, that's not entirely true, actually. West Hill at the bottom of it does say, is this, I'm sorry. Oh, that's Berlin Street. Yeah, Berlin Street, it says add sidewalks when things are upgraded on the hill. Blackwell Street says add sidewalks, make it better for bikes and pedestrians. So, and that's it. That's all. Those are all the details. A lot of the little points are repetitive because it's a lot of the neighborhoods are facing the same concerns and the same issues. But I hope that this serves us useful in the future to be able to go back to either this document or their source documents, because I recognize I don't want it to be seen through my filter. I did the excerpting to attempt to be helpful, but I don't want it to be something that improperly shapes the direction. So, but nonetheless, I feel like being able to find this stuff is good. And so I hope that ends up being useful in the future. And I'm running over my time a bit. I'm sorry. I know we started this 30 minutes late, and then I took the whole 30 minutes. I'm a total jerk. Does anybody have any questions about the planning that's that's currently out there? All right, I'm gonna call on Steve. Go ahead. Yeah.
Michael, can you share all of these exhibits that you've put up this evening?
Yeah.
I'd like to get, if you could email me a copy. I don't know if anybody else wants them, but of all the exhibits, not only in this section, but the ones you put up previously.
Everything should be in the link in the agenda, the one that says meeting packet, view online. If there's something missing,
okay,
let me know, because I tried to make it all available. But I'm, I've got a new process to try to, say like, hey, everybody should have everything, and I'm working out the kinks. So if there's something missing, let me know.
Yeah, I missed that on the agenda. I see where.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, it's at the top. I would. If there's one way to do all of this stuff for the city, I will happily observe the city way. I just did it this way because I, having looked into it. Okay,
that's fine. I just missed the link on the agenda. I mean, what you did is fine.
All right, great. Well, yeah, thanks for going along on this little journey with me. Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I thought it was a great overview, and looking over that Summer Street, the Main Street plan, it seems like there's just a lot of great pieces in there to improve Elm and Summer Street that could dramatically transform that section of downtown. And also, what stands out to me is just how nice this plan, although it is probably lengthier than a lot of plans are doing these days. It seems like Planning Director Mike Miller and PlaySense did a very nice job breaking out the city and thinking about needs throughout the neighborhoods and laying out clear steps the city can take to improve the quality of life.
I think one of the advantages of this overview is that I can actually show you in the capital plan where we actually have projects that fit right into those. So the
That's
Allen
awesome.
Street sidewalk, the connector between 6th Street and Richardson Road, looking at South Main Street, the missing sidewalk from 208 to Parkside. So there are, it's actually reassuring to me to know that the choices that we've been pushing forward, certainly the plan suggests them, but there's pretty strong popular support for them as well. And that's really what was driving some of our priority setting was where people were saying, we need this, and then provided an explanation of why. So we have some pretty good alignment. There may be more we can do with that.
If it's possible, I would love for it before the sidewalk from 6th Street to Richardson ends up in formally in a capital plan. I would love for that to come before the TAC, because my advocacy would be that there's a lot of more important sidewalks to build, but that's it's not for me to decide. But I would like for at least the TAC to have the opportunity to have some input to that.
One question, is that plan up online?
Which plan?
The capital plan
Ah.
that was referred to?
No, it can be, and Eli and I are actually working on an update for the upcoming year so that it can be available before December 4th.
Thank you.
All right. Well, next up, sorry, did anyone have anything else on the planning? Okay.
So Michael, there was one comment in there. Somebody added it into the chats.
Oh yeah, I don't think I can see that in my current setup. Yeah.
It looks like that Amy Galford said, FYI, I was told at neighborhood meeting that info there for bike path going along Route 62 in our neighborhood was wrong, and that's in the Vine Street area. And it's probably because to jump in, sounds like the planning for the bike path has had to evolve based on feasibility and alternatives, and there are continued conversations about that going on, right?
So I believe that's correct, that the original plan to run along 62 and then put a bridge over the Stevens Branch is less feasible, and that's how the road-based version of the bike path got started. So it's still on the books, but not scheduled for implementation.
But a question, when Amy says, was told at neighborhood meeting that the info there, where is there? The info there, where is that reference to?
I think she's referring to the info in the plan where there's an illustration of the bike path route.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
illustration.
it's the one where there are the little graphic. It's called Vine Street for our area. I think because they use the name Berlin Street for the steep slope section.
Right. The
And that's
illustration.
out of the municipal plan? Is that what you're referring to, Amy?
What's on the screen now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one with the little mini maps that's up on the screen
Okay.
now.
Yeah, those maps are old. That's the reason. And Jacob is correct that it's evolved and the maps haven't. But I think that these maps for the neighborhoods are actually their purpose was more to define the form of the neighborhood and not in detail define what was going to happen in them. Well, but thank you for being attentive and coming in with the correction now. All right. If we have nothing else on the plans, I would like to hand over the screen sharing. Unless you prefer that I was going to continue to screen
Yeah, it
share
might
it.
just
You
be
can say
easier if you
next.
put it
All
up
right,
and
I'll put it back.
what if I
All right.
make a little cue for next
All
slide? So,
I'll have to pay so much attention. Hang on a second. I gotta figure out how to do this again.
well, I want to thank committee and staff for their time to listening to this presentation tonight, and I just want to begin by saying this is a presentation about traffic calming, and that I don't think the conditions on Hill Street are really that different than other busy corridors in the city, although there are some unique features about this busy corridor. But the design challenges that are on Hill Street are really present citywide. It's just where I spent most of the pandemic, and it's in a neighborhood I love. So that's the background there. Are you struggling to find that presentation, Michael? I mean, maybe I could do the screen share. Oh, okay.
I'm on mute, right? Or am I not?
You're not.
All right, good. I was like not saying anything because I was like, I'm probably muted. Not. No, I just don't know how to use my computer. You know, I use it for other things, not this. You know. Boom. All right. I think I got it. But I don't have it at the beginning, and it's not scaled properly. So like, you know, just a second. Oh, it is zoomed to fit. Apparently. No, it's lying to me. Hang on a second. I just wasn't ready. Hey, good?
Yeah, that's good. Well,
All right.
I called this not so fast because I think a key problem residents experience around the city is speeding, and really nothing makes crashes worse, deaths more likely, streets noisier, air dustier than speeding throughout the city. And I also call it not so fast because I worry about our work being a bit too reactive to individuals or really immediate needs. And I think we need to be a little bit smarter as a community and take time to think through problems comprehensively and have an accessible and understandable process when there are citizen concerns that they know there's probably not going to be an immediate fix, but there's a process you can go through, and not to create the incentive that the loudest person in front of council is how we're going to solve our problems. But there's a logical and rational pipeline through which citizen concerns can be heard and put into implementation, and that takes time. So next slide. So not all roadways serve the same purpose or are funded the same ways, and a highway is totally different than a neighborhood street. And fundamentally, neighborhood streets should be safe places, different than country roads or limited access connectors or national trucking routes. And I've listened to a lot of people over the past few years make appeals for streets that are safe, places where people drive like kids are going to be around. They're concerned about daily conditions of dangerous driving, difficulty getting in and out of driveways. They're concerned about trucking where it doesn't need to be. They're concerned about high transportation expenses from overbuilt streets that devalue property. And they want to be able to walk and bike with less stress and worry and be showered in grit from some uncovered load going down the street. They want a livable place for the money they send to City Hall. And this is true for this corner of the city that I love. And just like it's true on Merchant Street or Allen Street or Berlin Street or Circle Street. Hill Street, next slide. Hill Street is the 8th busiest street in the city, and it's the 3rd busiest that's not a state route. And here you can see the top 12 most traveled streets in the city according to VTrans data. And the width and the darkness of the lines on this map indicate the traffic volumes. And Hill Street has about 5,400 vehicles per day. Next slide. That's a little bit more than the ski road on the up to Stowe, and even and it's more than a major corridor in Burlington South End on Pine Street. So it's a pretty busy, well-traveled street. Like a lot of places around the city, this is a corner of town, has grades that can lead to acceleration as vehicles ascend and descend the hill. And where there are hills, there's more likely to be speed, there's more likely to have more noise impacts, and there's likely to be more dust impacts too, and air quality impacts. Next slide. As we just reviewed, the city's municipal plan is broken into neighborhood planning area and includes policies like incorporating more sidewalks, crosswalks into street reconstruction and repair projects in this neighborhood. It speaks to maintaining sidewalks and making improvements that accommodate safe walking and biking, like narrowing travel lanes, bike lanes, traffic calming, and signage. And these policies and the intent behind these policies of the municipal plan is pretty clear. It's a vibrant, multi-mobile neighborhood with complete streets. Next slide. And that neighborhood and corridor is also important to people in neighboring municipalities like Barrytown. Between the town's northeast corner and the city, there are only 3 main access points for a lot of homes, and certainly that's a factor for public safety. But corridors like this around the city require special care to ensure that the city and the town's decisions don't undermine the long-term financial sustainability of the city and its ability to afford a transportation system that benefit to be able to afford the transportation and pay for people that benefit beyond its city boundaries. Next slide. And that's a fundamental purpose of regional planning, making sure one municipality doesn't disproportionately harm another municipality. And our regional plan does not identify Hill Street as a regional transportation corridor for freight. It doesn't identify it for through trucking, and it doesn't identify the town's northeast corner as an area plan for regional growth. Next slide. The challenge we face today is undoing city decisions that have not made streets across this, that have really made city streets pretty dangerous by design. They're also costly and less sustainable by design and less livable. In this section of Hill Street at Patterson, you can see features that undermine our city's vitality: excessively wide lanes, sweeping corners, no buffer trees between the sidewalk and passing cars, centerline striping aligned in a way that discourages on-street parking. These are all features that lead to speeding. Next slide. And similar conditions are present on places like Washington Street or Berlin Street, where, and this is a sign I found on Washington Street, a homemade sign put up by a young family. Those signs aren't going up in streets where people are driving anywhere near the speed limit. It's just not happening. And this is a radar gun. You know, you could stand out there all day and take shots of people going well above 40 miles per hour every single day, even with a speed trailer.
Can I interject? I didn't have to stand out there all day. That's my glove. I mean, I just just standing there and I was like, hey, how about this car? 41. I mean, it was just, you know, whichever car you choose. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Next slide. So a few things are more destructive to neighborhood life than speeding cars, and fast people drive through. When fast people drive through complex urban environments, like almost any neighborhood in the city, the more likely there is to be a crash. Higher speeds lead to a higher crash rate and more severe crashes when they occur. Next slide. Speed provides less time to process information and less time for drivers to act on it. Their field of view is functionally more limited, and braking distance is longer. And for pedestrians, that makes crossing a street more dangerous, and it makes it difficult for people to pull out of driveways. And we have a lot of driveways that were designed well before that street had the volume that it does or the dangerous speeding that it does. And so that's a concern in this neighborhood. Next slide. The difference between a car going 20 miles per hour and 40 miles per hour can mean life or death, as Barry has experienced in past accidents. 9 out of 10 pedestrians will survive a hit at 20 miles per hour, whereas only 1 will survive if they're hit traveling 40 miles per hour. Cars routinely drive more than 40 miles per hour on this corridor. Next slide. The people in Barry care about this issue because they can get nightly reminders of it, disrupting their sleep and making it impossible to talk with a next door neighbor across a fence. In a 2021 town meeting survey I put together, the #1 item Barry City residents said would most improve their neighborhood was speed, traffic, trucking, and noise amplifying vehicle enforcement. And the similar findings were found in a survey issued by the Planning Commission midway through the pandemic. Next slide. What does have staying power is not necessarily the enforcement, it's the power of design. And if you want to slow down cars, narrowing the lane width is highly correlated with speed. We know that from our own driving experience. When we sense a pinch point in a street, maybe there's cars parked on both sides, we slow down. And for instance, this study found that 10-foot, 8-inch lanes were associated with about an 85th percentile speed of 40 miles per hour. So even 10 feet encourages much faster driving than would be considered in most neighborhood streets. Next slide. The challenge we face as a regional center is that our enforcement resources are spread so thin, they're expensive, they're precious, and they're really only effective when they're present. It doesn't have the staying power that lasting design does. Next slide. And so I think the way to get to that benefit of a safer street is through design and through thinking about how that street functions, because both of them also add to the cost of maintaining a street. Next slide. And fundamentally, a street is different than a road. A road is meant to be forgiving and allow fast travel between places like Route 62 and the hospital. And when a road is designed to apply, when road design is applied to a street, it becomes a strode. It's kind of like a futon. It's not great at being a bed, and it's not great at being a couch. Streets are different. They are complex, and they are platforms for building wealth in the community. A street should outvalue, it should not take it away, it should not reduce property value. And when you're driving on a street, you should perceive the complexity of the place you're in. You should slow down, you should spend money, you should wave at a neighbor. That's the function. That's the function of a street. Next slide. Just to provide an example, not in Barre, here are two streets. One is 24 feet wide and one is 40 feet wide. Which one would you rather live on? Which one do you think has more affordable housing? Which one do you think is better for the environment? As humans, we know a quality place when we see it. We can feel that, we can sense that feeling of safety when there are trees and parking between us and speeding cars. We can do the math on an extra 16 feet of pavement, both as an initial capital investment and the ongoing maintenance cost of unnecessary width, and realize that it's going to add a big tax for each housing unit on that street. Next slide. Good streets build enduring value that sustains a place, the sound basis behind the city's big dig. And why do you think you can buy a beautiful home in Detroit for $20,000? It has everything to do with the quality of place and very little to do with the quality of home. And decades of decisions have made many neighborhoods in Barre look a lot more like places on the right in this image than the left. In fact, a lot of conventional engineering standards would tell us that the street on the left is so dangerous that it should be illegal. A lot of fire chiefs would say that every house on that street will burn down because two fire trucks can't pass each other with the driver's arms extended. But real people in the real world don't isolate safety to just one factor. We can intuitively know which place feels safer and which will be driven at speeds that are safe for kids without having to put up kids at play sign or drive like your kids live here, because it's designed for safety. Next slide. I think that the design decisions to overbuild streets are not only contributing to Barre's high tax rate, a high household tax burden, and the portion of the general fund carried by tax revenue instead of other fair share funding formulas or mechanisms, but it's also making our cities hotter in the summer. It's increasing flood risk to some of the poorest parts of town with the most vulnerable residents. It's exposing our streams to more regulatory oversight. Next slide. For instance, if our streams become impaired by sediments, the taxpayers could become exposed to more regulatory oversight under the MS4 permitting program. And when we overbuild streets, we thicken instead of stretching our tax dollars. It means there's less money to maintain things like stormwater drains or to a high standard, or invest nice things that add value like street trees or sidewalks. I believe financial sustainability really has to come first, and right sizing is one way to do that every time a street reconstruction occurs. Next slide. We also need to add up the high cost of non-local trucking and freight on streets that aren't designed or meant to support this traffic. This is a truck on a residential side street driving by a sign that says no truck traffic. I got that picture on his sixth or seventh pass. Pardon?
Just some random residential street somewhere.
Just some random residential street. Next slide. But without fair permitting and regulation and enforcement, like is occurring in other municipalities, there's no revenue to offset undue and avoidable wear and tear shouldered by the city. The pavement on Hill Street is only 2 years old. And already the grooves from the truck have been worn so deep by through travelers that I can't imagine how long its life cycle is going to be. It's probably, I don't know how many more years it has, Bill, but the reality is that the people in the city are the people who end up paying for this. The residents of the street end up paying for this. And the city gets a paltry $140,000 a year in state aid from the gas tax, which is hardly enough to pay the millions spent each year on our transportation system. And that's just not financially sustainable. Next slide. So I think it's time to get real in Berry City about who pays and who gains. Are we going to continue to put up with city taxpayers subsidizing rural sprawl, chewing up working farms, forest, and open space, or will we begin to prioritize the interests of the city's people? You don't have to look hard to find an example after example of cities' decisions putting regional traffic, speed, and development in other communities above our own environmental and financial sustainability. Next slide. And that's really why I'm comfortable saying not so fast. I think it's time to calm traffic and reclaim the vitality of our city neighborhoods. And next slide, the traffic calming can really be a lot of things, like temporary demonstration projects and paint bollards that tighten up lanes and turn radii, such as the next image. It doesn't have to be the big dig. It can be small and incremental. Next slide. It can mean better crosswalks like this from the Summer Street plan, like elevated crosswalks and mid-block bulb outs. Next slide. Or speed tables like this awesome work from Berry City Public Works on Circle Street. It could also be, next slide, mini roundabouts to break the flow of traffic and discourage through trucking on non-truck routes without the expense of a traffic light. And I think the annual cost of the traffic lights budgeted for next fiscal year are in the $25,000 range. That all adds up. Next slide. It can also mean allowing on-street parking on both sides of the street, like this example of a 50-foot right-of-way, which is the width of the Hill Street right-of-way. It can also mean, next slide, planting trees, or next slide. Building separated bike paths protected by parking or bollards so a wider range of people can feel comfortable on the street. Next slide. We're putting up street speed indicator signs. I saw one in Manchester that they programmed to say yup and nope. And here's one with a smiley face or a frowny face. Next slide. And please forgive me for this gendered response, but I think sometimes it just takes balls, because there are always people invested in the status quo, and I think we really have to overcome the reasons why things can't work and do things like Public Works is doing on Perry Street and experimenting, or the demonstration projects, and continue that innovation and continue to build a pipeline. Next slide. Because we can visualize change in Berry, and I think our future depends on it. Our investment and improvements must make things better for people who invested in the city and people who are thinking about investing in the city, because people decide where to live, where to retire, where to vacation, where to work, based on what communities look like and how they function and how they manage negative externalities and conflicts between users. So this group has an opportunity to make sure good process leads to good product. And I'm really excited by the thought of taking on a more comprehensive approach to traffic calming and thinking about road hierarchies, because none of us alone can install a curb or put up a street sign, but we can support good process, good planning, and good policy. So the people of this, to address things people in the city really care about. So thank you.
Thank you, Jake. All right, I'm gonna stop screen sharing somehow. Oh, that's a new share. I don't know how to do anything. Oh, it's the thing right here, right? There we go. All right. Okay. Well, sorry for messing about with my computer. I think that this presentation does a really good job of encapsulating some of the pain that people are feeling around the city. And the reason that I wanted to spend some time on it is not because my hand is pictured in it, in a glove, but because I think that we can look at the you know, at some of the pictures and the changes that are represented in the pictures, and say, how could this happen here? How could this make one of our one of our neighborhoods better? So I'm really appreciative that you came and you gave us this presentation. I know it's your street, but I think that like so many of us live on streets like this. Not me. Mine's pretty quiet.
In the spirit of full disclosure, it's also on my street. My house was the one in the lower left-hand corner on those maps, and it's true, all of what Jake said. And I also want to underscore where those storm drains are all plugged up. Every single one but one on the section between Washington Street and Nelson Street look like that. So we have problems. We have problems on this street, and I think Hill Street would be a great place to do a pilot of some of the things that Jake outlined, that we could then copy on all those other streets. And I think we have a list somewhere, don't we, Michael, of all the streets? It's not just Perry, it's not just Allen, it's not just Merchant, it's not just Hill. I think there's probably 9 or 10 of them where people have stood up. And if I weren't on the committee, I would be coming here as a resident and saying, hey, this needs to be looked at and addressed. Because for all 6 years that I've lived here, I get woken up in the middle of the night way too often.
I think there's definitely value in moving incrementally, and having a place to do a pilot is, I talked to Bill about this some months ago, and having some place where residents are bought in to making changes to test them can be really valuable. I'm not sure I'm thrilled about the idea of it being the neighborhood where, which is overrepresented by members of the TAC. And so that would be something that we should really look at the city as a whole and see where people are enthusiastic about it. But that's, it is not my call to make any of those decisions. But yes, I think that we have a lot of opportunities with relatively small changes, to have huge differences in outcomes for our neighborhoods. And there's every reason to be optimistic. Do we have any thoughts from staff, members of the public?
So I guess one of the things that comes out of these type of presentations for me is a recognition that there are simple truths, and when you look at them, it isn't complicated. One of the demands of my job is that I look at doing things in a way that they're likely to be sustained. And so the idea of doing a pop-up and doing a protected bike lane, for example, in my mind, is a really good pop-up, because we're going to get at least 3 things from it. We're going to see how it actually works in the location that we choose. We're going to learn how people respond to it. And so the reason a pop-up is so valuable is because you can actually refine the methodology that you use. And so we talked about lane widths earlier. Do you want to try to pinch down a lane before you come to that area? My example would be, let's look at Hill Street and look at the area up by Woodland, okay? Up by Woodland, the street narrows to about 28 feet, maybe 27 even. And so should there be something that we do there, knowing that we're coming into a section that's over 40 feet wide, literally 600 feet downhill. And so learning those things so that we can apply them is a incredibly important part of this. And the second thing is measuring people's response to it. And if the response is so negative that it can't be sustained initially, then you don't have a lot of cost.
Well, I think that's for whom is it a negative response? And I think point of this presentation is that the customers are the city residents and city landowners who pay for it.
And I think that's a point that's really well taken. I mean, you folks are funding, your city government. I think there's one of the things that pop-ups allow us to explore are what are the consequences? And again, if we change one street, it has an effect on another. And I don't know where, if we squeeze one area, where it goes to. And again, that's one of the advantages of reversible change, is we get a chance to see where there are unintended consequences. But your point is really well taken, that it is all in the eye of the beholder, whether it's an improvement or whether it's objectionable. And on some level, we've got to commit to the city's residents.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I would take from all of that is it's time to start twiddling those knobs. So if we want to know what the what's effective, what gets some kind of result. So we know what result we're going for, but if we want to see what is what's getting the system to change, we have to start making those interventions. And I know in some places we're doing it, but I think some opportunities that we've had to to get those to get those first steps in place, we haven't been able to do it, like through for a variety of reasons. But I think once we start twiddling, we'll start learning, and maybe we'll be able to accelerate from there. Does anybody else have anything? I think everybody kept to their time except for me at the beginning. Basically, I let our prioritization discussion go on too long. All right. Well, in that case, let's. Sorry. Did someone say something, or was that my echo? Lost my. Our next step on our agenda. And thank you again, Jake, for presenting, is to confirm the date of our next meeting. Does December 15th work for everyone here?
I won't be here.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it's just two of us, we certainly won't have quorum. But I think we should assume we'll keep the normal schedule, that at least we'll get Giuliano, and if we don't, then we will not have a meeting, as it will turn out. So we'll try to figure out closer to the time whether people can arrive, whether people will be available. All right. Next up is our roundtable. I will let anyone, members, staff, do a hand raise if you want to add anything at the end of the meeting.
I'll just put a quick plug in. I thought the minutes were very nicely written, and thanks to Eli for doing that. But I'm happy to be a minute taker. I know it's difficult to participate in a meeting and write the minutes, but I have some experience. And then I also think we might want to think in the future, just looking at future agendas, about voicing support for a merger with the Paths, Routes, and Trails Committee, and maybe even the Parking Committee, into one single comprehensive transportation committee to reduce the amount of staff time associated with supporting so many committees. And as I understand it, the Paths, Routes, and Trails Committee has lost some members. So and it seems like that maybe some attendance issues this week. I don't know if that's gonna stick, but having some more members might be helpful, and different perspectives.
Yeah, I'm open to getting that on an upcoming agenda. Is this something it's coming from council, or is it?
No, council's taking no official action on that. Just express I think the concern is there've been a lot of staff vacancies, and for many reasons, and staff has been spread really thin, attending a lot of meetings, and and perhaps there's an opportunity to think about merger or combination to lighten that load.
Well, that sounds pretty smart. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Judy on the chat says, who oversees maintenance of the Smith Street bike path? Concerns over parking.
That would be me.
ahead,
So
Bill.
DPW deals with the bike path itself. Traffic enforcement is with the PD, but we can work with them. And so if somebody's noticed a problem, please help us find it when it's there so that we can deal with it.
And just to clarify, is that the parking problem, is it using the path as a parking space, or I'm just trying to imagine what the well, in any case, perhaps you will. Aha. There's a thing that's showing up in the chat. I think it's great. Yes, that's what it is. People parking in the path. I think that what Bill says is exactly right. Let Bill know when someone's there. And also it's a police enforcement issue, right?
So we've reached out to the commercial properties on that street about trucks on the path. And I also saw the note about Ferguson's and the angle parking, and we've had conversations with them, but we can follow that up. That's helpful, Julie. Thank you.
Well, if no one else has anything to add to our roundtable, I appreciate everyone coming out and sitting in here a little bit late. I would hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right. Since I'm the only person left, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Good
very
night,
good
everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Very good.